I next decide to visit Hutt River Principality, an independent sovereign state set up by a farmer to fight against an unfair wheat quota law that would have destroyed his livelihood. I meet the sprightly 91-year-old Prince Leonard, who still gives tours to visitors from all over the world. This is his story. After World War II, the Australian government set up the Australian Wheat Board to acquire all wheat produced and then market that wheat overseas. The idea of the board was to stabilise the industry and shelter growers from volatile market fluctuations by offering a guaranteed price. The bumper wheat harvest of 1968 brought about the idea of a wheat quota, restricting the amount of wheat offered to the market so as to reduce the potential of a surplus, which in turn would reduce prices. In 1969, wheat farmer Leonard Casely, who for the previous 20 years had produced and sold 6,000 acres of wheat, was given a quota of only 100 acres to sell. He protested the Wheat Board's decision, but to no avail. The wily wheat farmer then hit the books, studying law. He found an international law called the Unjust Enrichment Principle and sent a claim of $52 million to the West Australian government, claiming the wheat quota to be unlawful. In return, the government attempted to rush a bill through Parliament, which allowed them to forcibly take Casely's land. Casely burnt the midnight oil, poring over various laws. He found that land title law stated no more than 1/20th of anyone's land can be resumed by the sovereign. 15 all.
Just too hot to handle.
The government ignored Casely's rightful understanding of the law and continued to push the new bill through Parliament. Casely was backed into a corner. Everything he worked for was about to be taken from under him. He once again hit the law books and found the international law of self-preservation, which gave him the idea of setting up his own government to preserve his lands. On the 21st of April 1970, Hutt River seceded from Australia, using another law Casely had read about, the succession laws of Great Britain. All he needed to do was name his territory, elect a government and adopt a flag. And there was nothing the Australian government could do. 30-15.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Over the years, various governments have rained down revenge on Casely, but each time he has outsmarted them with his do-it-yourself understanding of various laws from around the world. Laws of war, the Geneva Convention, and British laws of treason have all been used to keep the government at bay. He has declared a 3-day war with Australia, changed the status of his province from a republic to a principality, and thus becoming a prince, and suffered numerous attacks over the years from the Australian Taxation Office. At one stage they garnished half the funds of his bank accounts, most of which were actually medical reimbursements he had received for being a war veteran. I found Prince Leonard to be quite an astute man. He made his money running a successful export business, selling fruit and veggies to Singapore. Before this, he'd worked as a shipping clerk and served in the RAFF, fighting against the Japanese in the Pacific. He tried his hand at property development, copper mining, and has developed theories on mathematics he calls the spirit codes, which map out the mathematical values of various aspects of the universe, such as animals, energy, DNA, and the origin of life. The government ensured there will never be another Prince Leonard, changing land titles to convey property ownership from a real man to a straw man, a fictitious person, someone who does not exist. In this way, they can now take ownership of anyone's land anywhere in Australia. In typical Prince Leonard fashion, he has turned to the law books yet again to undermine the Australian government. He stated that all laws in Australia have their authority from the Constitution, of which the Queen and her heirs have authority over. Without their authority, no law is a valid law. Prince Leonard says many current laws did not get the required request and consent by the Queen and are thus ultra vires, meaning they go beyond the powers of the government and are thus invalid. I wandered through his sacred educational shrine, set up in memory of his wife, Princess Shirley. It provides explanations of his spirit code theory. At the centre of the shrine was a stone he called the Stone of Light. It was found near a copper mine he owned half a century ago on what is now Ashburton Downs Station. He also mentioned finding what he called a sacred site on one of the peaks of the nearby Capricorn Ranges. White stone blocks, 1 metre cubed, with a second line atop, in the appearance of a pyramid. Off to one side, 3 upright monoliths of the same white stone, equally spaced, the middle stone taller than the others. The Aborigines told him they didn't venture into this area due to lack of food and water. He said a contract mining team he hired ended up destroying some of the site. But this didn't matter to me. A seed had been planted. I decided I must visit this mysterious mountain and see what remained.